Hi, guys. Welcome to Own Your Essence, the podcast where healing meets empowerment. I'm your host, April DeMille, a psychic medium and a life coach specializing in grief, trauma, and toxic relationship recovery. This is a space for deep conversations, powerful transformations, and raw healing. Each week, we'll dive into soul centered topics like psychic mediumship, the supernatural, metaphysical wisdom, emotional grief, addiction, mental health, spiritual wellness, and self discovery. Through inspiring interviews and personal insights, this podcast is here to spread awareness, spark connection, and support your healing journey. If you're ready to set boundaries, reclaim your confidence, and step into your true power, you're in the right place. Let's own your essence together. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Own Your Essence podcast, where we get to have deep transformational conversations with some of our favorite people. I am your host, April DeMille, and today we are going to be speaking with Leticia Francis. She is the Survival Mode Disruptor, trauma recovery mentor, author, and podcast host of Survival Mode Disrupted. And I really do want to talk to her about some of this fun stuff. Hi again.
Hello.
I just read your little introduction, Leticia, but if you want to tell the audience who you are, what you're doing, and kind of like a little backstory of how you got here, that would be a great way to kick this off.
Absolutely. So I have coined myself the Survival Mode Disruptor. I am a trauma recovery mentor that facilitates disruptive, unapologetic transformations for high achieving women. I stepped into this space after recognizing about 20 years after my abuse began that I had been operating from trauma responses and I have been in survival mode for decades. And the reason why I do what I do is because I want to bring awareness to others that healing is possible, number one, that in order to start thriving, we have to lay down our survival identities, number two, and that healing is possible for everyone. I'm really, motivated to have disruptive conversations around trauma. I don't think that we speak about it enough in the open space. I think oftentimes we sensationalize the events that put us into trauma responses, but we don't have open conversations around what it takes to heal beyond that. So that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, and so I would agree with everything you just said. I think that people act like healing is so fucking taboo. It's like, oh, don't touch the Pandora's box. Oh my God,
Mhm.
stay away from it. And so I think that having awareness around those hefty subjects is so important to our evolution. And so with where you've come from, you also experienced domestic abuse, and I think you shared a little bit about that. Can you share that with the audience too?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to go back a little further than that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, go for it.
I recognize in my own healing why I ended up in situations that I ended up in. When I was 7, my mom was marrying her second husband. Her first was my father. And I remember having a conversation with my father about why they got a divorce. And without uh, diagnosing him, his narcissistic traits told a narrative that really created a landslide of bullshit in my life. He
Okay.
told me that my birth was the reason for their divorce. And at
Oh,
7, I didn't know how to process that.
right.
All I could process was, well, damn. I ruined the most important relationship of my life.
Right. Like daddy just said you're the problem. That's all you
Yeah,
knew. Yeah.
that's all I knew.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I became very resentful of my mom
Hmm.
because I felt like she didn't do what she needed to do without understanding what that was to keep the relationship together. And the reason why I was asking these questions is because my mom was marrying a man that made it very clear he didn't want anything to do with me. And I just didn't understand it all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is what started a lot of the shit in my life. I would say that I grew up in between two family units. My daddy also remarried. He had a family over here. My mom had a family over here. There were other children involved, and I was kind of in the middle
Yeah.
with not really feeling any acceptance.
Hmm.
Shortly after, my father told me that I was also molested by a neighbor, and that those events really led me to exploring what it meant to be seen and heard, right? There was this conscious awareness of that what was happening to me was not supposed to be happening. However, I felt seen. I
Yeah.
felt accepted. I actually felt loved. And
Yeah.
coming from that space where I felt like I was in between two family units, kind of figuring out things on my own, that was welcomed.
Yeah. It was validating.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't recognize how much that those incidents impacted me until I was later in life. So this is seven. Now, by time I'm 12, I have my period really early. I mature really early. Like when I'm 12, I'm looking like I'm 18, 19.
Okay.
Full body.
Yeah.
I was, and I was getting a lot of attention from men,
Yeah.
not boys, not teenagers,
Grown
men.
men. Yeah. Yeah.
And still wanting to be seen, heard, understood. I gravitated to that attention. So
Hmm.
I lost my virginity at 12 by rape. And again, I didn't think anything of it. Like, did I classify it as rape then? No. It wasn't until I got older that I recognized that no, I said no over and over and over. Like, that was rape.
Right.
I had multiple sexual relationships from the age of 12 until 14 with men.
Hmm.
And then I was introduced to this guy who was 30. And he gave me all the attention that I had ever desired
At 14.
at 14.
Yeah.
That became my safe space. That was where I used to escape. I had a lot of contention. I was living with my mom at the time. I had a lot of contention in the home. Her husband hated me and I hated him.
Hmm.
And she outwardly chose her husband, which I never understood. And I still don't understand it today. They're still married, and I still don't understand how she would choose a man over her own child. But I leaned into the environment that this man created for me. He he gave me a key, so I was able to come and go out of his house. I used to go there after school and stay until 11, 12 o'clock at night, and then go home in enough time to get sleep, get dressed, get up and get dressed for school the next morning. And weekends, I'll be going all weekend. And because my mom had young kids around that time, I don't really think I can't speak for her, but what I viewed was I was out of her hair. So it didn't matter to her.
Yeah. One less
I
child to
didn't
worry about.
recognize. Pardon me?
I said one less child to worry about right now.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was out of the way and I wasn't causing any problems in the household. So,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
um, I didn't recognize that I was being groomed. However, I did notice in some ways how very early in that relationship he would point out all of the things that were going wrong, right? Like, this is my safe space. So, of course, he knew what was going on in my household. Of
Yeah.
course, he knew the frustrations that I had. And I used to remember him making notes of how much he saved me. He was my savior. And I
Yeah.
couldn't argue with that because he did create a safe space for me until it wasn't safe anymore.
Hmm.
The first time he put his hands on me, I was 15. I walked into his house, not expecting him to be there. He had seen me talking to a boy at my school, and he was jealous of that fact. I walked into his room and I was choked from behind. I couldn't even anticipate what was happening. He choked me from behind and threw me on the floor and began kneeling on my neck and telling me what a who I was, that he knew that I was fucking around. He knew that I was doing all of these things that I wasn't doing.
Hmm.
And I strongly believe that the only reason why I survived that was because somebody in his household pulled him off of me. I knew, I was very conscious that a man should never put his hands on a woman, even though I wasn't a woman, but I knew that that exchange wasn't good. And I packed everything that I had in his house after that into a black trash bag. And I walked to my uncle's house, who stayed not far from him. I got to my uncle's house and I told my uncle that I needed a ride home. And he looked at me and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I can't talk about it." So we sat in the car on a 20-minute ride to my house in silence. And when I got out of the car, he said to me, he goes, "Listen, whatever's going on, if you ever need me, you just tell me, okay? And I will be here for you." I never told anybody about that. But now I am in this space where I no longer have a safe space, right?
Right.
I broke up with him.
Yeah.
Like, that
Yeah.
wasn't what was going to happen for me. And the contention that I had used him to escape became 10 times worse. I started fighting a lot with my mom. And one day we got into a physical altercation and I pushed her to the ground. She kicked me out. She said, "You have to go live with your father because I'm not putting up with that."
Yeah.
So I moved into my father's house. I was I think initially I was relieved, right? Like, I had a lot more freedom at my father's house. Like, while my mother allowed me to come and go as I like, she still tried to get all up in my business when I was in the house, which is why we were always arguing. But my daddy, yeah, he didn't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as long as you're in the house, as long as I know where you are, like, it doesn't matter. So there was this level of freedom living with him until one day he pulled me into his little man cave and said, "Well, my wife doesn't want to raise another child, so
Ugh.
you have to go back to your mom." And I didn't understand that. Again, that was his narrative that was very much rooted in narcissism because I later learned that it was him that didn't want anything to do with me. And I later learned that the reason why him and my mama got divorced was because he cheated on her, right? There was never any ownership from my father's point of view.
Yeah.
So I got shipped back to my mom's house less than a month after being kicked out. And I was very angry having to go back into that environment. Several weeks later, I got into an argument with my mother's husband, and in my anger said I should just kill myself. And he says, "Oh, you want to kill yourself?" He called my mama into the kitchen. He called my baby sisters, who were probably 3 or 4 at the time, into the kitchen and said, "She wants to kill herself, so let's watch."
Oh, wow.
and they all watched me attempt suicide.
Oh my
So
goodness.
when I was taken to the hospital, my mom was very angry. She was very much in the church at the time, and she was like, you can't get to heaven if you commit suicide. And my thought was, well, how are you gonna get to heaven when you sat there and watched your daughter try to kill herself and you didn't do anything to stop it?
Right, because one sin's not greater than another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I had a lot of animosity towards my mother, particularly after that, because I absolutely could not understand how this woman could stay with a man that literally wished death on her child
Yeah. I was happy to
and made
sit
a
there and watch
skeptic
it.
like
Yeah.
spectacle of it,
Yeah.
right?
Happy to sit there front row.
Yeah. So after the suicide attempt, I was forced into psychiatric care, which continued for most of my teenage years. But that also created another dynamic. We had a family meeting, and in that family meeting, I was encouraged to speak my truth. In that meeting was my grandmother, who was very active in raising me, my mother, and my father. As I started speaking about how I felt abandoned by my father, he got up and walked out. And that was the last time I spoke to him for about 7 years.
Yeah. Because Lord forbid he have any accountability.
There was zero accountability even to this
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah.
I, in that, it created another narrative for me. Like, I'm here literally fighting for my life, and my father doesn't give a shit. My mother can't protect me. And I decided that the only person that felt safe to me was that man that put his
Hands on
hands
you.
around me and threw me to the ground and kneeled on my throat. And I went back into that relationship because that was my escape, right?
Well, it
Even
was
though
the
I
only
knew it wasn't
safety.
safe.
Yeah. It was the only somewhat safety you ever felt, or
Yes,
relief in some wild way.
yes. So, um, by the time I was 16, approaching 17, my mother kicked me out of the house for good. She essentially gave me a restraining order in a very nice package, saying that if I return to her property, I can and will be arrested to be removed. So I was almost forced to stay in that relationship because, you know, whenever an adolescent is the problem, they're the problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's never, well, what's going on in your household that's creating this dynamic. So everybody took my mom's side. My
Of course.
mom's family stopped talking to me. My dad's family had disowned me when he cut me off. And that
Mhm.
was literally the only place that I could go to keep a roof over my head.
Yeah.
Around that time, I was graduating high school. I learned that my father cut me off financially the day that he walked out of that meeting, that family meeting. I almost didn't graduate because I was going to a private school at the time, and my mom had to come up with the tuition that he stopped paying. And I went off to college. But I didn't even complete 3 semesters because the man that I was in a relationship with was like, if I'm your man, you can't be in another country. Like, you need to figure out what you want. It's either you stay with me or you go off and live your life. But if I lived my life, I would literally not have a roof over my head when school wasn't in session. So I quit. And I went back. I'm originally from Bermuda. I moved back to Bermuda. I moved in with him. I got a job. Shortly after that, we got married. And when we got married, the abuse ramped up, if I'm honest. It was
Oh
like there
yeah.
was this level of ownership
Yep.
that was very apparent. He would say things like, "You owe me. I'm the only person in your life that gives two shits about you. Like your mama kicked you out, your daddy don't want you. You need me." The physical abuse ramped up. He used to whip me. I was sexually abused, financially abused in that relationship. Um, and what was interesting is around that time, I also took a job as a law enforcement officer.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't a police officer, but I was working alongside the police. And there was this realization of how human the police were. So they used to come to work and talk a whole lot of shit about the things that they saw. And I realized very early on that I never wanted them involved in my stuff.
Yeah.
So I probably hid more than I ever hid in that relationship while I was working there. But there was a time that the police had to be called because he tried to barricade me in the house after he learned that I had spent some money that he didn't want me to spend. And the only way that I could get out of that situation, I had to run to someone's house. And that person called the police who escorted me back to my home that I was living in with my husband. And instead of them helping me, he pretended that he was about to commit suicide. So the
Oh,
attention
classic.
went off of my needs
Right.
onto him.
Yeah.
And again, I recognized once I got back to work and I heard the Chinese whispers of my police call that I really have to be silent if I don't want people in my business.
Yeah.
But me calling the police was the first time that I decided that I did not want to be in that relationship anymore. So I started making plans about how I can get out of that relationship. And I really wanted to go back to school. So I started applying for universities. My plan was to apply to multiple and go to a school that he didn't know that I applied to and just essentially disappear.
Mhm.
I never got to that point though. One day I left my phone at home. I didn't realize my phone was at home. I thought I lost it. And when I called it, he answered. And in between trying to find ways of getting out of my marriage, I also started talking to other men. There was never any sexual contact with them, but it was attention again. I was
Yeah.
still craving the attention that I had been craving since I was 7 years old. And so knowing that he had my phone, I recognized, oh shit, he's probably going through my text messages. So when he answered the phone, I could tell that he had been drinking and he told me he'll deal with me when he got home. At that time, we were living with someone else because our home had been destroyed by a hurricane. And I remember sitting on the couch just anticipating the bullshit that was going to come through the door, especially knowing that he had been drinking. And as somebody like anybody who's been abused
Yep.
can tell you, you kind of know when it's going to be super bad. Like you
Yeah.
can feel it instinctually.
Yeah.
I knew that this was going to be a bad night, and I was kind of bracing myself for it.
Yeah.
But as I did, my landline rang, and it was one of my friends who had been around since the very beginning of the relationship. She would call me and ask me for advice in her abusive relationship. She was in a relationship with a heroin addict. And I was her solace. I was the person that she would come to. So this day, as I'm anticipating my husband coming home and beating the shit out of me, I'm sitting on the couch giving my best friend advice. And I opened a book by Jan Van Zant called Until Today and randomly read a passage to her. That passage talked about how people are in our lives for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And the reason why we often have problems in our interpersonal relationships is because we're trying to keep people who were only there for a reason around way longer than they need to be. And it was like this aha moment for me
Yeah.
that night. Like, this is why I'm so unhappy. This man does not need to be in my life. Like, I really need to do something different.
Right.
And I always say, like, when I reflect on it, um, it's amazing that it happened that night, right? So a couple of hours after I have a conversation with my friend, my husband walks in the door belligerently drunk. And
Right.
he told me, "Oh, so you think you're gonna leave me?" And I said, "What?" Like, just trying to play it off, trying to placate, trying to keep the peace, right? And I
Right.
was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, you think I don't know that you're talking to all these guys. You're probably fucking them all. Well, I promise you, the only way that you're gonna leave me is in a body bag."
Okay.
He started walking towards me, and in as he got closer, I realized that he had a knife in his hand. And I got up and I ran into the bedroom that we were living in, and I called my mom from the landline. And I was like, "Listen, I don't know what you're doing. I don't care. I need you to come and get me right now." And at this point, it had to be after midnight, right? So he followed me into the room. He pulled the landline out of the wall. So I actually wasn't even sure if my mama heard me correctly.
Yeah.
He then proceeded to barricade us in the room that we were in. And whenever I talk about this part, I always say it was like was watching myself fight for my life. I was very dissociated from what was happening. It was like an out of body experience. And
Yeah.
it's like I was looking down on me fighting, right?
Yeah.
And at the time when the incident occurred, it was only him and I in the house. He barricaded the bedroom. Every time I moved, he threatened to kill me. Um, and at one point in time, I tried to start packing my stuff, and he lunged towards me. I didn't recognize in that he had stabbed me because there was just so much.
Yeah. Because it happened so fast.
Yeah, everything happened so quickly. And shortly after that, the person that we were living with burst through the barricaded door. So he heard all the commotion. It was my husband's friend. I ran out of the room and I fell on the couch, and he followed behind me, straddling me, trying to stab me. And I say, like, it was like a Matrix moment when Neo was dodging the bullets. And I say it and laugh, but it's not funny.
It's not.
But
Yeah.
like I was literally dodging this knife
Yeah.
coming at me.
Yeah.
His friend pulled him off of me and then told me that I had to leave. Like, you gotta go. Like, this is too crazy. You got to leave. I was barefoot. I still had my uniform on from work. Um, but not the bottoms, just the tops. So I'm now standing outside in the rain, not knowing what to do. And luckily enough, my mom heard me. So as I'm standing there trying to process what do I do? I don't even know what to do now. Here comes my mom. But right before that, I remember processing this feeling of warmness running down the left side of my body, and I just didn't know what that was.
So you
And
still
it wasn't
hadn't,
until my
you still didn't know you'd been stabbed at that point?
I still had didn't know.
Okay.
So when my mom pulled up, she starts screaming immediately, you're bleeding, oh my God. And
Yeah.
that's when I realized that he had actually stabbed me. So he heard or saw the car come into the yard, and he started throwing all of my shit outside in the rain, in mud. And I'm trying to pack up the stuff that he's throwing outside of the house into my mom's car. Over the years, my husband would give me pieces of Louis Vuitton to apologize to me. So
Right.
at that point, my Louis Vuitton collection was over 20,000. And I
Yeah.
used to keep it in a singular case. I keep everything together. In the commotion, he threw that case out the window too. And I was like, oh, wow, it's throwing the Louis Vuitton out. Because, like, that was something he always held over my head.
Right.
Forget the clothes. I need to put this in the car.
Yeah.
But he recognized that he made an error by throwing that out. So he came outside and started unpacking the car to get the Louis Vuitton case. And I started fighting him for it,
Hmm.
right? Because, like, I don't think I definitely wasn't in my right state of mind, but
Yeah.
in what I processed was I earned that shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna take it from me. And my mom was like, "Are you crazy? Just get in the car before this man kills you."
Right.
I think that's when I recognized how much danger I was actually in.
Yeah.
And I got in the car, and my mom started heading towards the hospital. And I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. She's like, what do you mean? And like, you're bleeding, you've been cut. I was like, Mom, I'm not going to the hospital. I absolutely am not. So can we just go to your house? So after some convincing, she eventually turned around and we went to her home. We got to her house and we started sorting through the stuff that had gotten thrown in the mud. And I recognized that I didn't have the rest of my uniform. And the only thing that I could process is I know I'm hurt, but I need to be at work in 4 hours.
Right.
And I don't have a uniform.
Yeah.
So I end up having to call my head of my department to explain to her that I probably cannot go work right now until I'm issued another uniform because I just got stabbed by my husband. And she gave me the okay to take the time that I needed. So I'm thinking, okay, I've gotten work ticked off. We'll sort out everything else that I need tomorrow. I'm gonna lay down and get some rest. And my mom came in the kitchen and said, well, I don't know what you're gonna do, but you absolutely cannot stay here.
Right.
And again, I'm like, this is literally the lowest point of my life. I literally almost lost my life. And this woman is kicking me out
Yeah.
again.
Yep. Classic.
So I had to make some phone calls to try to figure out what I'm going to do with myself. I eventually called a women's resource center who instructed me to go to the police station, no questions will be asked, and they will escort me to a shelter. And so that's what I did. I was escorted to this shelter where I stayed for about 2 months as I built my life, rebuilt my life. Now, I am 21 at this time. This is the first time I've ever lived by myself. This is the first time I've had to pay bills. And on top of that, I'm trying to come to terms with like, what just happened? Like, I had been in this relationship now for almost 8 years and I could not define who I was beyond that relationship because my identity was tied to my interpersonal relationships, right? And
Yeah.
almost all of them had been very I was isolated in my marriage. So I couldn't even say that I had strong interpersonal relationships. I didn't have anything. I was left having to put the pieces back together at 21 without any tools. And what that looked like was me finding solace at the bottom of a bottle. I drank myself to oblivion almost every day. Like I was the running joke at work. I used to go work drunk. Like you know how you have a good night out, you go home, get some rest, and you wake up with a hangover and head to work. No, I was drunk. My hangovers used to kick in 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was my life for about 18 months until I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to school.
Yeah.
So I left Bermuda, I moved to Georgia, and I went to school where I got a full scholarship. And I started piecing my life back together until I met this man. And I fell hard and fast. I had not been in a relationship at that point for 2.5 years, and I thought, okay, I'm ready for this. But I didn't realize that the man that I fell hard and fast for was a cocaine addict.
Oh
And
no.
like I said, I had a full scholarship. I had access to money. I had saved like 50,000 to before I moved to Atlanta. And this man drained me of every dime because I really had no clue what addiction looked like, what manipulation was. Like I really was clueless. I thought that I was helping him, I was fixing him, I was saving him, but
Yeah.
that came at my own detriment.
Yeah.
3 years in that relationship, and then I found out that he was married. Um,
Oh, my goodness.
and that was devastating, but I was left having to pick up the pieces and move on.
Yeah.
So I eventually graduated. I moved back to Bermuda. I got a job in commercial insurance. And things were going really well. Like I was focusing in on myself. Was in love with Ian Van Zant and all of her theories. I bought every single book she wrote. And around that time, she had released this book called Peace from Broken Pieces. And I read that 3 times back to back. I felt like I was reading my own story. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, she didn't get stabbed, but the journey to healing was very much like my own. And I think I was feeling like I have finally got into a place where I was learning how to prioritize myself. I was learning how to set goals. I was learning how to see beyond the next day.
Yeah.
And then I met this man.
Okay.
And it came after me feeling very lonely. I remember saying to somebody, I'm so lonely. I'm so used to being in relationships. I've been in relationships since I've been about 14. I don't know how to be single. And I
Right.
hate it. Right?
Yeah.
Um, and that person told me to write a list of everything that I wanted in a man. And I did. And then I meet this guy who ticked every box but height. And that first year with him was like a Hallmark movie. It was bliss. It was heaven. It was everything that I needed. I needed that at the time. But then one of his family members died and he relapsed on crack cocaine. And because of my previous relationship, I was able to see what was happening almost instantaneously. And I was like, listen, I'm not dealing with this again.
You're
Like,
like,
I'm absolutely not doing it.
yeah. You're like, I've seen this movie. I know how it ends.
Yes, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But he was able to convince me that he would stop. And again, not really having a clear understanding of addiction, I was so caught up on how great this man made me feel for a year that
Mhm.
maybe I could stay and help and do all of these things, which I did. But the problem was I didn't realize how deep his addiction was, how bad it was at the time. He was still paying the bills. He was still going to work. It was very different from what I had seen before.
Yeah, because he's
So I
functional.
really didn't, yes, I
Yeah.
really didn't understand until one day he called me from work. And he was like, listen, I told you that I was going to get some help. I'm going to an appointment this afternoon. I need you to pick up a bag from me from work. He worked at a high-end restaurant slash grocery store as a chef. And there were multiple times that I've had to pick up bags because he's to cater people's events on the side. So this day I go to his job, I pick up this bag, not recognizing that this man had been stealing from his job for months and using that money to buy his crack. And like
Oh
stealing like
no.
legs of lamb, whole prime ribs. Like he stole so much that they had installed cameras in the walk-in freezers and fridges to figure out, and they just couldn't figure out how he was taking stuff out of the building.
Yeah.
That day, it was through me. And when I went to pick up the bag, I was surrounded by security. And I was like, listen, you can just take it, like, do whatever you need to do to him. And it has nothing to do with me. Let me
Yeah.
go, which they did. He lost his job. He got arrested. He served about 1 hour in jail. And I
Okay.
thought nothing else of it until about 3 weeks later on my corporate job. I got a call from my receptionist to tell me that the police were there to see me. And I knew that if they came to my job, I was about to be arrested. So I told her, can you tell them to meet me in the lobby? Which they did. And I was promptly arrested for receiving stolen goods that day. I was taken to the police station. I was processed. I was given my one call. And I called my mom and I was like, listen, I need you to get me a lawyer because of what my friend did, like I need to get out of her. Couple minutes later, the sergeant came to my cell and he was like, I don't know who you are, but like we don't give visitor rights to people here, but you have a visitor. So I'm thinking, well, it must be my lawyer. You know what I mean? It must be
Yeah.
the person my mama called. Um, it wasn't, it was my mother. And she asked me a single question. She asked me, why do you love everyone else more than you love yourself? And that was like a Mike Tyson body blow. It winded me. It floored me. I didn't know what else to say. But that single question was the catalyst for me to really take ownership of my own shit, take ownership of my life. Now, I was not the reason why I was in jail that day.
No.
But my decisions gave birth to that arrest. And I had to take ownership for that. I end up being in jail for 8 hours. I served more time in jail than he did, and I was never charged with anything. I was later released. But I immediately reached out for help. I end up hiring a coach who made me see that I had become very comfortable with being a victim. And as long as I was living on victim lane, I was giving away my control. And that actually angered me because I felt like, particularly after my divorce, I was in control. I was independent. I did everything that I needed to do for myself, right? Like I learned how to rely on me. So to hear someone say that I was giving away my control, I was giving away my power, like what the hell are you talking about? But that
Yeah.
was exactly what I needed in
Yeah.
order to get my life back on track, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that coaching relationship gave birth to me relocating. I relocated to England. And I've been here now 13 years and I grew my career. I had children. I did all of the things that conveyor belt of success laid out for me, but I
Yeah.
wasn't fulfilled. And after having my second child, I decided to quit my commercial insurance job, and listen, I was at the pinnacle of my career. I was working out of Lloyd's of London, and for those who don't know, that is the birthplace of insurance. So to start in a small insurance company in Bermuda to then be running a multinational team out of Lloyd's of London, like I celebrated me.
Yeah.
But I wanted something more. I wanted to feel like I was having an impact, not just making someone else millions. And during my maternity leave, I decided to start a coaching certification. I got trauma informed and I quit my job. And for the last 6 years now, have really been focused in on how I can make an impact in the world. And now I talk about trauma. Now I talk about survival mode because, listen, I was there. I was in the depths of survival mode for over 20 years. And my story isn't mine. My story, I believe, was given to me to help me help others. And that's what I do.
I love that. I love that you've taken something so personal and so painful and turned it into something so helpful and so well, it's beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful disaster is what it is.
Absolutely.
That's always what it is. And I'll tell you why I was so drawn to your story because I have also lived a very um, nice little life of abuse. And I didn't get stabbed the same way you did, but I was cut with a knife. That's kind of when I got to a point where I was like, oh my God, like that was a massive wake up call for me to be cut by someone that I thought loved me. And on top of that, I had already lost one of my youngest daughter before that, prior to that. And so I felt like, holy shit, this man could have just killed me and then my other kids would have had nothing. They wouldn't have even had me. And I had to really sit with that, the discomfort in that. And then all the abuse that came through him, he didn't want to take accountability for actually cutting me. So he went around telling people I tried to kill myself. And I mean, just the classic stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just classic stuff. And then later the story was, oh, I didn't want to tell people why I was a felon in jail, so I told everybody I got a knife fight with some big dude. I was that big dude apparently. So yeah. So I mean, it's just all the stories, and it's just like never the accountability.
Never.
Never.
Never. My
And
ex-husband was approached by my father, right? Like once my father heard what happened,
yeah,
and I wasn't even in contact with my father, but my sister told him what happened.
yeah,
It was at least 10 hours later. He still had my blood on his clothes, arguing that he never touched me.
that's insane. Yeah, insane.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And then I also had I didn't have a good foundation with family members. So I had different households that I bounced through, stepmom that hated me and I hated her just as equally. She was an abusive asshole too. My dad was a drunk. My mom was a drug addict and a drug dealer. I had all the things. So like there was no net, no safety net. Like where does this child fall? And you literally do have to pick up the pieces brick by brick on your own. And they'll never take accountability for their part. And that's okay. That's not my fucking problem. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's all you can do is like put those pieces back together and then as you're informed, you're in a position to help inform others.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's super empowering. Absolutely. Wow, what a massive story to tell. And I'm so glad that you're finally on the other side of that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It,
that's
it it
huge.
it was a journey, and I often tell people, a lot of people would love to believe that healed is a destination, but I recognize every level, every time I elevate, every time, I achieve, there's always something that I need to revisit.
Uh,
Because it opens up old wounds, like it's like I still get triggered by people approaching me from behind.
oh
Like what?
yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
still very hyper vigilant at times because of how I lived for so long, right? And
Yeah.
survival mode, you don't recognize that you're in it until you're out of it,
That's
right? This is
exactly right. Yeah.
this constant state of fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And because a lot of people tend to fall into fawning or freezing, they don't recognize the toll that state of being takes on your body, on your
Yeah.
emotions, on the way that you show up every day.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful to have survived my journey. and being able to bring awareness to other people. I believe that awareness is the first step into accident survival mode. And I think it's key in order for us to collectively thrive. I don't think that
Yeah.
any person is an island. I think we all have our place on earth. And the only way that we can feel our purpose is by doing the work.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Really diving into it and looking at those pieces of ourself that, you know, um, that, well, they need to be seen. It's like you need a spotlight on that shit because you get so conditioned that you don't realize that they're even there, that they're even a problem, that they're
Hmm.
even a pattern that continues to unfold every day. Yeah.
Hmm.
And even like you said, the layers even have layers. Like it's, it is a never ending process for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, if you were talking to someone that was just beginning, could you tell me a little bit about what like survival mode means to somebody that's new to this and what and how that might show up for them, like signs they could look for?
Hmm. A lot of people who are in survival mode are performers, right? We plaster a smile on our face. We say, I am fine. We actually are probably excelling in areas of our lives, but in the inside, we know that it's all a lie, right? I like to liken survival mode to autopilot.
Mhm.
We are just existing.
Yeah,
And while we may be thriving, like I thrived in my career in the middle of survival mode, but every other aspect of my life was falling apart.
right.
But that was because I chose to numb. That was because I chose not to address my emotions. So I focused all of my energy into performing for someone else, right? Showing up, being the best that I can be while I didn't believe that I was good enough. So I
Yeah,
think survival mode, whenever I talk about it, is that autopilot where we don't really have control. We are just surviving. And oftentimes that looks like people pleasing,
right.
overachieving, uh, uh being the martyr, being the fixer. I fixed everybody that came into my orbit while I ignored all of the things that I had to fix for myself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We create these identities that we needed in order to survive. And
Hmm.
when we're no longer in that space where survival is necessary and those identities are still at the forefront of how we operate, that is when we are still very knee deep in survival mode. We
Yeah,
all end up in survival mode at one point in time in our lives because we all have to survive something, but it is still being in that state when the threat is no longer present.
yeah, yeah. And like there's never any experience of real peace or real joy. Like you said earlier, in your story, you always felt like there was still something wrong, there was still something amiss, like nothing ever felt fulfilling, like it just wasn't doing it for you because there was so much other stuff that needed to be looked at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Leticia, thank you so much for sharing your very powerful story with me today. Is there anything else that you want to share with our audience before we end it here today? And maybe you can also share how the fastest way people can find you if they want to work with you.
Absolutely. So I just like to say, in order for us to access survival mode, it happens in three phases. The first is awareness. We can't change what we can't see. I often liken awareness to a lighthouse, right? A lighthouse gives boats in the middle of the dark night the opportunity to course correct if they're heading towards shipwreck. And self-awareness does the same in our emotional lives. Second phase is reprogramming, being able to challenge our narratives, challenge our beliefs, challenge our conditioning, and redefine ourselves that in a way that isn't directly aligned with our trauma. And then the third is a reinvention, being able to lay down that survival identity that we absolutely needed in order to survive and actually start thriving. And I think, you know, the reason why these conversations are so important is because oftentimes people suffer in silence from a fallacious place of, well, I'll never be able to get beyond this. And I want your audience to understand that healing is possible, thriving is possible, but it starts with a decision to do something different. And if anyone who has caught this episode would like to reach out to me, the best and easiest way is through my website, www.leticiarenefrancis.com, LeticiaRenefrancis.com. There they can get access to my book, The Survival Mode Exit Plan, my podcast. I actually have two podcasts, the Survival Mode Rebellion and then the Survival Mode Disrupted, or my membership, Survival Mode Exodus. Or you can look for me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Disrupting Survival Mode. I have free resources available on the website, and also that's the best way to contact me.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again, Leticia. Is there anything else that you feel like we didn't cover that you need to pop in here real quick?
No, thank you
No?
so much for
Okay.
this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to help me say goodbye to our audience real quick, bye, you guys. See you guys next
Bye. Thank
time.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining Own Your Essence. I am beyond grateful to our guests for sharing their wisdom and to you, our listeners, for being part of this journey toward healing and empowerment. If today's conversation resonated with you, please feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this space with others who might need it. If you have questions, topic ideas, want to be a guest, or would like to work with me privately, send an email. I'd love to hear from you.